all of you loving Rajpatra. It was sudden, collapsed in 1 minute at a massive heart. I've known him for the last 35 years as a very dearest friend, as an elder brother. He was truly a Badshah kind of a person. किसी ने लिखा है, हम जिंदगी लोगों की शर्तों पे नहीं अपनी जिद पे जीते हैं. उस बंदे ने जिंदगी अपनी जिद पे जी और इतने महान थे वो अपने प्रोफेशन में. दैट्स वेल नोन टू अस. आई विल नॉट एलैबोरेट ऑन दैट, बट एज ए ह्यूमन बीइंग वेरी फ्यू पीपल नो. बहुत पैसा कमाया उन्होंने, बहुत अच्छा काम किया, बहुत अच्छी उनकी फैमिली है. एक बड़ा लॉयर है, उनकी डॉटर इन लॉ डॉक्टर है, बड़ा बेटा भी डॉक्टर है, उनकी वाइफ स्कूल में वाइस प्रिंसिपल थी, शी रिटायर्ड. इतना महान आदमी था जो आज आपके हाथ में एक्ट है. दिस इज हिज लास्ट गिफ्ट टू अस. I gave him a file to get it printed so that people can examine it. So I think I will cherish this act. I will never throw it out. I will keep this all with me. Whatever we are doing today in these classes, it was also not exactly his design, but he forced me to get into it. I told him 40-50 hours talking is too big. You know, as the luck would have it, परसों हम लोग कट्टे लंच करते हैं. That's why normally I go very quickly without samosa at 1 o'clock. We spend 20 minutes together. I just slept. इससे क्या हो गया, आपके मतलब सो भी रहे हो? मैं कहा यार वो 3-4 घंटे, 1 घंटे घर में 4-5 घंटे होता है तो नहीं तुम्हें थकने की जरूरत नहीं है, ये पूरा करना है. लोग हमारी उम्मीद पे हम आते हैं, आपको पूरा करना है. And you will not call anybody else for lecture. This one he told me that people are tuned to your kind of talk. Therefore you continue, don't invite anybody else. That was his greatness. Notwithstanding whatever pain we had yesterday, the pain will never go. But I thought, as a tribute to my friend, I was determined to pursue this training course today, so that wherever he is in God's hands, he says that my mission is being done. May I request all of you to stand up and can we chant Om Shanti for 1 minute as a mark of respect to this great man. You know, he was successful not because he loved us. He was successful because we loved him. That was the hallmark of his success. And I will request all of you to chant Om Shanti for 1 minute as a mark of respect for my friend and for all of us. So, through this day, let's resolve we shall carry out this mission till its end, whatever it takes. And we will prove him wherever he is. Yes, we are continuing to be mentored by you and we are doing our best to fulfill this mission. So, friends, with this, you know, I was reading one of these days, a philosopher called Freud, a Russian philosopher, he said, what's the meaning of life? He says life is no other meaning except that once it doesn't move, you are dead. That is life. That inspiration I took, and I, with a very hard decided, very hard, heavy heart, I spoke to Rahul, we will continue this mission tomorrow itself, as a tribute to my dearest friend, Rajpatra. And I'm sure today our session will be more hectic, more knowledgeable, because his blessings will be with us. He is the man who shall inspire most of the people. He has inspired me as a person. I've never done anything in my life, in my family business, except with his approval. Like investment, whatever. And he was such a great man. पूरी बिल्डिंग के जो स्वीपर्स हैं, पियंस हैं, they always look for me कि सर हमारे घर में शादी है 10 लाख रुपए. We have a member called MS Arora. His driver was in a house. His driver, he is known to us, all of us, and he came and told me, मैं घर बना रहा हूँ, उसको लाख रुपए के चेक दे, आप घर बनाओ। इस तरह का वो जिंदा इंसान था, rarest of rare. He was the rarest of rare person, and he was totally apolitical, except bar election 1 or 2 days. But if Ashok Sharma goes, he'll help him. I go, he'll help him. Many times he told me, Sushil, I'm sending this case to you, it's a appointment on charge. And we will do it. We, at least, मेरे बारे में बार में मशहूर था कि अगर कोई सुशील काम नहीं करेगा, 15 साल को बोलते काम होगा. So he was determined to do good to all of us. And wherever he has gone now, we don't know which world he has gone to, where God has taken him. I'm sure that particular population shall also be happy to see him there. And I pray to Almighty, his family get strength, and he was the closest to Mr. S.T. Bhatia. And Mr. Bhatia we could not see him yesterday. Normally he's a laughing Buddha. Yesterday he was totally broken. First he lost his brother, now he's lost a brother and a friend. So it's a huge loss for all of us. With this background, friends, let's start what we wish to do today. So, we will recalculate section 73, finish 74, and finish section 17 ITC along with 74. And now 17 will be relevant after we get. So remember 5 minutes. Remember section 16, 1, 2, 3, 4. 16.1 tells you what is the entitlement of your ITC. 16.2 gives you the conditions. If you satisfy those conditions, you are entitled to take the input as credit based on your purchases during the course of other business in your electronic credit ledger. And you must have tax invoice. You must have received, again repeat, though the English grammar is not very relevant to interpret a legal entry, but the way the entries are written, that gives you intention of the legislature, what intention they wrote that particular English. So he has received, it's a perfect tense, that means it's a post facto stuff. He must prove he has received the goods or services. Unless he is able to receive the goods, your collateral evidence of tax invoices, payment made, eBay bill, challan, balan is all bakwas. It has no meaning for the purpose of this particular class. You have to only prove that with all these documentation you have in your possession in support of your claim, you had received the goods. So if there is an allegation, the person from whom you bought the goods, it never existed, then it's impossible for you to claim if you have received the goods. It is not possible. If they have a chain of investigation where there are report after report that these suppliers never existed, these shops never existed, these addresses never existed, they were all fraud, we can always say that you gave them license to kill. That particular phrase stands on a different legal tangent. The revenue officer department was negligent to issue these kind of licenses to them. But that doesn't entitle you to claim input tax credit based on no proof you ever dealt with this man. So whenever you attempt to make a show cause reply, you must keep in mind how do we collaborate this receipt of goods by the taxpayer along with other documents. Simply you say कि मेरे पास tax invoice है, ये है वो मतलब लिखते हैं, कोर्ट से कोई सेंस नहीं. For example, I always tell you have a C form, but if the transaction is doubted, C form does not create a transaction. C form is a transaction for a concessional tax. F form doesn't confirm any stock transfer. When you move goods from one state to another pursuant to not a contract of sale, then this is a transaction. So remember 16.2, then we came to 16.3, the 180 days issues. So 180 day issue is legitimate. I personally have no objection to this clause because you are not being denied input tax credit. It's only being deferred whenever you get payment, and this has no limitation, whenever you get payment. The only thing is, as professionals, you have to keep track of such credits. is when you are filing a return and you come to know that out of 10 bills, 3 bills have not been paid within 180 days, and you cannot claim input tax credit, somewhere you have to make a note to follow it up. कि जब भी ये पेमेंट होगी हमें क्लाइंट के इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट क्लेम करना है. दिस इज योर जॉब, नॉट क्लाइंट्स जॉब. इट्स आवर जॉब बिकॉज वी आर अप्लाइंग द लॉ. Then we came to 16.4. You have to claim whatever input tax credit or adjustments, whatever you want to do, up to a certain period. That is November. From the अभी नवंबर हो गया.
नवंबर हो गया. पहले सितंबर में
नवंबर हो गया. I think thank you, but I am not aware because I don't do this. I know the law. So up to November of this financial year you can claim. If you do not claim till November, then in my view you can never claim it. No court will give you relief. And that is limitation, and that is the implication of Bharati Airtel interpretation done by Supreme Court on 39.4. And last was that you must have filed a return under section 39. Two definitions in section 2. One is return, one is valid return. The definition of valid return refers to section 39. Therefore, when we say valid return, it has huge implications. As we now start doing 74, it will tell you when you return wrong. That is, if you do not disclose the correct particular return, the explanation to section 74, this is suppression, is fraud. So, in this sense, it is different from section 73 of Service Tax Act, because the explanation added here creates more problems for us. Right? So whatever Supreme Court judgments also we are going to read in earlier regimes, they'll be subject to this definition. So when you file the return, I told you other day, return means at that particular time, your return should be bona fide. तो कैसे है? कुछ भी लिखते हैं फिगर कोई भी क्लेम कर लिया. You must have sufficient evidence or grounds with you. If you have made a claim, you can support it with some opinion, some judgments, somewhere. Supposing you say that these mics are tax free. You are not paying tax, is 28% otherwise. So what basis you are paying tax free? Because you file the return. So once a return has been redefined in section 2, return is one part, valid return. The word valid presupposes in law if your return was bona fide made, you had sufficient grounds to support this. Who is Siddharth Kejriwal? You are Siddharth Kejriwal? Some Siddharth Kejriwal is here? Send me a message anyway when you come to the field. And then we came to section 73. 73 presupposes a notice can be issued by the proper officer. And it is based on his subjective satisfaction. There are no reasons recorded there. It says if it appears to the proper officer that a tax has not been paid, short paid, underpaid, or a refund has been erroneously claimed, then subject to limitation in section 73, he can issue a notice. He has to issue a notice with at least, the words uses at least. You should read the 73.3. The word uses at least, that is mandatory. 3 महीने से कम का नोटिस आपको इशू नहीं करेगा तो इस टाइम बाद. You can issue 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 1 year, but minimum 3 months before the limitation expires. That is 3 years from date of filing of annual return. 3 महीने पहले उसको नोटिस देना आपको, उसके साथ एक स्टेटमेंट लगानी है उसको कि भी आपकी क्या लायबिलिटी बनती है नहीं बनती है. If based on that statement for that year or for all the years together, if you pay tax and interest under section 50, all proceedings need to be dropped. However, if you do not pay, then you issue the show cause notice. If after show cause notice also, if you make payment of tax, interest and minimum 10% penalty in section 73, the entire proceedings are dropped. If you do not pay, he adjudicates. Once he adjudicates, then you have right to file appeal under section 107. If the order is not passed within 3 years, that last they included, when we use the word within, that is before the 3 years expire. Now, what is the order? That's a legal issue. The order order dispatch होना चाहिए, stamp होना चाहिए, कुछ भी होना चाहिए. We will discuss this when we come to appeal issue. But here, if it does not pass order within 3 years for any reason, including COVID, it's time back. The jurisdictional limitations when an order was supposed to be passed, unless the act was amended, were not extended by Article 142 Constitution. They have extended limitation only for the purpose of filing appeals, petitions, applications. They did not extend the limitation which were jurisdictional in nature as per law. So if an order was not passed within 3 years, everything is over. That is why in Delhi department they issued thousands of orders in one day. There is a judgment of Bombay High Court recently 2022, Great Way India, where an order was passed based on a commissioner circular in June 20, though the limitation was March 20. I'm telling you just this, I'm not telling you the facts. Case went to High Court. High Court said under what law has commissioner power to extend limitation? It's not Supreme Court. They declared all such orders as time bound. They went to Supreme Court, SRB was denied. The Article 142 order did not extend the jurisdiction. Only extended limitations for the purpose of filing. And assessment order is not, it's a jurisdictional issue. So, why I'm telling you again section 70 is 16 is because in 74 we are going to use this again at a scale which is much bigger than section 70. So, this background, let's go to section 74. Notice उसमें दो नोटिस आते हैं, एक तो पहला आता है कंसल्टेटिव नोटिस, बाद में आता है शो का नोटिस. हाँ तो देन सेम है.
सर शो कॉज की जो सेकंड पेज है उस पे देयर इज अ प्रॉपर शीट व्हिच हैज कैलकुलेटेड.
पता है
शीट पे भी वही कट एंड पेस्ट.
नहीं कट पेस्ट जो भी है, अगर फिर नहीं है तो शो का नोटिस इनवैलिड. यस बिकॉज़ देन द लिमिटेशन ऑफ 30 days has no meaning for you. What will you pay? अगर उसकी डिमांड की क्वांटिफिकेशन नहीं है वो 30 दिन में आपको देना देंगे कि आपको पता ही नहीं क्या डिमांड है. दैट शो का नोटिस इज नॉट वैलिड. ओके वी स्टार्ट विद सेक्शन 74. पे अटेंशन. इट इज बेसिकली सेम थिंग लाइक 73, सेम ग्राउंड्स. वी विल रीड ओनली सबसेक्शन 1, एवरीथिंग एल्स विल कैरी ऑन. वी विल नॉट रिपीट इट. अगेन वेयर इट अपीयर्स टू द प्रॉपर ऑफिसर that any tax has not been paid or short paid or erroneously refunded or where input tax credit has been wrongly availed or utilized. These are the same grounds that we have 73(1). But the function of these grounds in 74 is different than 73. They say by reason of fraud. You have to go back to your desk and read what's the definition of fraud. Contract Act defines fraud. Fraud presumes mens rea. तो आपने टैक्स इवेजन करने के लिए फ्रॉड किया. आपको पता था जो आप काम कर रहे हो फ्रॉडुलेंट है. It's not a mistake. It's not a bona fide error. It's a well-intentioned, calculated fraud to evade taxes. So that is the meaning of fraud. So unless if they want to invoke 74, unless they prove what was the fraud, when you file reply, you have to tell them that this is not a fraud. Therefore, your notice is invalid. And as we go through Supreme Court judgments on this issue of 74, Supreme Court has quashed all such notices. So what is fraud? You know fraud? So for example, you file a return where you have declared all your claims. Right? And you did not revise the returns. So everything is declared in the returns, but it's fraud. There is no concealment. आपने बोला है मैंने 0% दिए. Now they can say that you have short paid, underpaid. But can we say this is fraud? It will be fraud when you do not declare this turnover. Then it's fraud. But once you have declared something in the return, it's available on record, it's online available. Now the officer cannot say because he did not see 3 years ago, now he says, मैं 5 साल में 2 साल में और लगाऊं. Like in Delhi VAT Act section 34, you have a similar provision. It's 1 year or 4 years or 6 years. Delhi High Court is series of judgments as quest as demands. What was the reason for invoking extended period of limitation? Same with 11A customs, same with 11A excise, 128 customs, same provisions exist. लेकिन हमारे यहाँ प्रॉब्लम है जो इसकी एक्सप्लेनेशन है वो अलग है. Where we are get killed is explanation. That is supposing we say there are two kind of return. One is return which you are required to file based on a certain directive. Suppose the commissioner says कि आपने जितना import किया है मुझे इस परफॉर्मा में रिटर्न करवाओ. That's a return. अब उस परफॉर्मा में जो रिटर्न भरते हैं आप सारे पर्टिकुलर नहीं देते. So the expression talks for the word return, not valid return. Return includes valid return. Valid return may not include the return. Valid return is linked with section 39. Return is not linked with section 39. So when we say fraud, आपको नोटिस आप पहले देखिए, इमीडिएटली उसके पहले रिटर्न देखिए आप ये किस चीज पे फ्रॉड माना गया. आपने कंसीलमेंट किया, आपने टर्नओवर दिखाई नहीं, आपने सप्रेशन किया. If you remember the principle of adjusted generis, we discussed first or second day, we will apply this principle here. They are very strong words used by lawmakers. अगर कोई उनको और ग्राउंड लाना है तो इन्हीं वर्ड्स के अंदर लाना है, इतने स्ट्रॉन्ग वर्ड्स होने चाहिए. Then 74 comes into play. Say for example 1780 becomes time barred in January 23 or whenever. I'm sure lakhs of notices shall become time barred, assessment shall become time barred. वो से कहते हैं यार मैं तो assessment नहीं किया, गड़बड़ है. Then you have to challenge in High Court that this notice is not valid. Because once you participate in proceedings and do not challenge the jurisdiction at the earlier opportunity, you lose that right. Courts may still entertain, but in tax matters courts don't. ये आपको मालूम है Mr. Sujit Verma is not a proper officer. Why did you appear before him? That means you did not do your homework. You did not do your basics right. ये proper officer था या नहीं था? इसको किसी सर्कुलर नोटिफिकेशन में पावर थी या नहीं थी? आपने पढ़ा पर जवाब लिखा पैसे की और भर दिया उसके आगे. अरे बात नहीं बढ़े. The function of jurisdiction, whether pecuniary, zonal, locational, or otherwise, the function of jurisdiction in law is that only that person can do that act, whom that act has been assigned, by the commissioner or by the law. If anybody else does, this is without jurisdiction. For example, let us say VAT matters, you were registered in VAT, Part 80. Is the value-added tax officer? Part 82 is also value-added tax officer. So what difference does it make to you if 82 what does your assessment? You cannot. Because he was not the proper officer for your work. If he does, he was not concerned with jurisdiction. Therefore, whatever assessment may be totally valid. Dealer पूरा चोर था उसकी assessment बिल्कुल ठीक हुई है. But this will go only on this ground of jurisdiction. Because when law requires an act to be done in a particular manner, it should be done in that manner or not done. So whenever you confront this section 24 notice, you must presume that this is fraud, misstatement, concealment, suppression of facts. सबसे पहले आपको अभी रिटर्नें देखनी है कि जिस ग्राउंड पे 74 पे नोटिस दिया गया आपको, क्या वो ग्राउंड आपके केस में वैलिड हो सकते हैं? क्या ये फ्रॉड आपने किया? Supposing there was a Supreme Court order that this particular item is taxable at 10%. You write 0. Can we say this is fraud? Answer is no. It can be short paid, underpaid. You can recover tax, but you can't say this is fraud. So simply because 73 limitation has expired, now you want to still harass a dealer or tax him, whatever APC reason, you cannot invoke that. Like I told you, 73, 74 are in the nature of reassessments. Reassessment jurisdiction is not inherent. An officer doesn't have jurisdiction to reassess you. He gets jurisdiction if he satisfies one of these four grounds 73, 74 to assume jurisdiction. Only these 4 reasons. There is no fifth reason available to it. It's not an inclusive definition. If it doesn't have these reasons, he has no jurisdiction to issue that notice. जैसे सुनील जी बोल रहे थे कि ऐसा नोटिस आया है, you should challenge in High Court status. It's invalid. But if it doesn't, then he participates in the proceedings. Then his client suffers. So wherever you think that you have a case that this notice is invalid for any ABC reason what you have in mind, think of challenging this in High Court. Normally High Court does not interfere with the notice. But where notice is apparently without jurisdiction, or is unsigned, or it doesn't give the calculations, and law says within 30 days you can pay without penalty, or within 30 days for Shokran notice with 10% penalty. उसमें डिमांड ही नहीं है तो वो मतलब it won't become unmarketable. They will quash it. But quashing doesn't mean that they cannot reissue. Subject to limitation. But if by the time that is quashed and limitation is over, then even High Court cannot direct to the reissue. It's over. But if there is a limitation available, 2 days available, High Court grant time within 30 days. But if on a date when High Court is deciding limitation is already over, High Court has no power whatsoever under Article 226 to extend limitation, not even Supreme Court. Limitation must be available, then they can extend. And then normally there is a law, time taken in any court proceeding when things were stayed will be excluded. Right? I told you the other day, one of the cases in 3-4 years ago, Revenue wanted that this operation of this order should be stayed, which is being challenged by Mr. Verma. I said, where is the power of the tribunal to stay the order? Why not a court? At least where come power? There was a lot of hangama done by government council. What is this? I don't think what is this? Show me the power. Can tribunal stay? It's an appellate authority. It's not a court for any expression of any nation. They did not stay. So we get Supreme Court judgment. Only courts can stay the operation of the orders impugned before tribunal. Tribunal is only second appellate authority bound by the statutory prejudices. High Court is not bound by statutory prejudices. Article 226. So the first reason is if you claim input tax where tax has not been paid, short paid or investment funded, or where input tax were wrongly paid by reason of fraud, or or. So remember and or. These are alternate grounds for the officer to invoke Section 74 jurisdiction, or any willful misstatement. Again, willful. It requires mens rea. There is a judgment, Commissioner Sales Tax UP versus Sanjeev Fabrics. Please note down, read it, Google it. This judgment of Supreme Court defines all these words, though under Central Sales Tax Act, but all these words are defined by Justice D.K. Jain in a very long judgment.
Sir, repeat कर दीजिए.
Sales Tax UP versus Sanjeev Fabrics. If you Google it, you will get it. If you read these one judgment, Section 74, you will understand better, because all these words are defined through judgments and through dictionaries. So, willful also requires an intention not to do. For example, yesterday we did not have a class. Supposing it was a paid class where you had paid me. Can you say this was willful? No. Whatever message I could send, I sent. So willful also presupposes your mens rea, mental intention to do harm, to evade taxes. And what is willful? Misstatement. The word used is willful misstatement. One is a statement you make, which is bona fide. Or you make a misstatement, that is you try to misguide the authorities by making the misstatement. Jhoot bola. That is called mistake. And this section 74 requires a willful, कि आपके माइंड का मेंटल इंटेंशन कोलैबोरेट होता है कि आपने जानबूझ के लिए अथॉरिटी को गलत स्टेटमेंट दी. फॉर एग्जांपल, I tell you कि Mr. K.R. Bhatt had appeared with a power of attorney. In my statement I said, no, he is not my lawyer. I never authorized him. Therefore, all your proceedings were illegal. You simply caught somebody and recorded a statement. But tomorrow if they prove that given a power of attorney, then this is this statement. Or suppose you say, they put you a question and investigation, how many bank accounts you have? Since we have only two which are in balance sheet, we do not have any other bank account. They produce a third bank account. You say कि ये जो आपने पैसे माइस ये किससे लिए थे आपने? अशोक शर्मा से डील करते हैं. So far as the approver Ashok Sharma has no connection with this business. Because he has come and recorded statement, I don't know this man. That is against this statement. That means you are trying to misguide the authorities. Okay, look, what you did was correct, which in fact was not correct. That is called willful misstatement. Next is suppression of facts. I tell you one entry like this. There was a case of, not in this context, but it's a good example. It's a case of Maruti Wire India Limited versus Commissioner Sales Tax. They are a dealer for dealing in tallow, animal charbी. उससे साबुन बनते हैं, chemicals बनते हैं. He was dealing in tallow which was taxable at that time. He did not declare that turnover. It was taxable. The Supreme Court was concerned with an issue whether interest can be levied under these circumstances. The provision in Sales Tax Act was if tax according to self-assessed return has been paid, interest cannot be charged. No, this is not declared in the return. Supreme Court said you cannot charge interest, you can hang him otherwise. Because this was not a part of return itself. That is why in GST law, they came out with two definitions of return to invalidate such judgments. That is why they put section 50, 73, 74. This was not there in earlier VAT return assessment cases. Interest provision was not there. Mentioned in the assessment provision. They were there. Like you were section 42 VAT Act. So therefore, when we say suppression of facts, एक आपने स्टेटमेंट हो गया, अब आपके फैक्ट्स हैं. आपने बोला जी आपने इनको कितनी पेमेंट की थी, आपका अकाउंट कहता है जी 3 करोड़ रुपए की, कहते हैं आपने बैंक लिया, बैंक कहता है 2 करोड़, 1 करोड़. सर 1 करोड़ तो हमारे किसी बंदे ने दी थी, हमने उनको कहा था उस बंदे को लाओ. Supposing all your statements do not get corroborated with this ground realities, then we say you suppress the facts. And once you suppress the facts, your hands are not clean. No court will be done. Recently, many high court writs have been dismissed by courts only on this ground. You did not approach the court with clean hands. So whenever, as lawyers, chartered accountant, professionals, we sit down and start drafting a showcase notice deadline, it is a foundation of long-drawn litigation. That you did not agree to pay within 30 days from showcase notice, either 74 or 73. With a penalty of 10% or 15%. Now you want to get it adjudicated. So whatever applies you have filed, your strategy should be clear right at the threshold whether you want to pay. For example, ये supplier के झगड़े without delivery of goods, एक dispute है. A fighter is one who knows the strength and weaknesses. Can he fight? If you cannot fight, you tell the client please pay. Then he's paying only for 1 year. But by the time you adjudicate, it will be 4 more years. Then hang him. Death. छोड़ेंगे नहीं. Therefore, whenever you get a showcase notice, spend time. Don't hurry up. No judgments have no relevance to facts. Your fact change, judgment is irrelevant. It has no meaning at all. You can quote Supreme Court, High Court, whatever. But if judgment was on a different provision, on different facts, the issue of the judgment had no meaning. But delivered at that time. For example, I was just reading today morning some judgment, where they say that section 74 notice was adjudicated and got dropped. Then the officer said, okay, make it 73. Court said no. Had you not adjudicated, the act authorizes you to be the 73. But once you have adjudicated and dropped, now you cannot get 73. And the explanation says, once in the case of a principal taxpayer, 74 notices are dropped, then this is deemed to have been dropped in all other cases. So these showcase notices are very important. If you do not use law, I can guarantee you cannot draft reply. Whatever replies will be nonsense. You can write 50 pages, 100 pages, 200 pages. It cuts noise. Law is like a storytelling. When you see a movie, if the story like the movie, if the story goes here and there, कहीं से उड़ के आ गया, कहीं से वो लव सीन आ गया, कहीं से किसिंग सीन आ गया, कहीं गाना आ गया, भाई क्या हो रहा है? स्टोरी कहाँ है? If you see a film like Mughal Azam, that was storytelling. You just could not leave your seats. For example, the English movie The Great Escape, the Nazis when they came out all these prisoners. Law is also exactly same. Can you create a story for your case? For example, you get a notice कि आपने delivery नहीं, that will give you one example. How will you start? If you receive the notice also, our reply is that. The whole substance and form of your so-called notice is that we have claimed input as credit under section so and so, and so and so, on the ground without delivery of goods. And all other paragraphs in notice are in support of this allegation. After पहला story कैसा आपको कुछ नहीं notice उसके पास है ना. Now you have to second say, however, we humbly state that the allegation made by you cannot be allocated against us for the following reasons. Right? Whatever reason you have. Third, in support of the above reply, we are supported by the following judgments, where facts are paramateria to the facts of your social purpose. Following judgments, court of trading paras, all these judgments full copies are annexed for your inspection. In view of the above, we hereby 74 को कोट करेंगे, 16 को कोट करेंगे, 25 nobody will read. ऐसे नोटिस भेजते हैं, सारे प्रिजन कोट करते हैं. उनको पता नहीं कि कौन से प्रिजन में कर रहे हैं, वो सब कोट कर देते हैं, वो टेलर मेड. So whenever you start to discuss these notices with your client, story should be clear in your mind first. कि क्या है ये चीज? जब तक आपके रिटर्न है, आपके जूनियर बच्चे, आपको पता नहीं आपने क्या रिटर्न भरे. आपको पता ही नहीं कि आपके जूनियर ने सीनियर ने क्या रिटर्न भरी. How will you reply notice? I guarantee you will never ever get in the court. कभी नहीं जीतेंगे आप. आपको उसके रिटर्न देखने हैं. Return is the foundation of your list. List starts when you file the return. तो रिटर्न आपको जितने बड़े क्लाइंट हैं, आपको एक बार बैठ कर रिटर्न देखने चाहिए कि हमने क्या रिटर्न भरी. तो वो गलत थी क्या ठीक थी, वो भी आपको पता है. उससे आपके एडवाइस से भरी. After you know all this, then you create a story in support of your case. And this story cannot be imaginary. You cannot create illusion. As someone says, illusions create imprisoned dreams. Imprisoned dreams do not cater to reality. The reality you will lose. So when you go by these 4 words, if tax is not paid, short paid, or refund erroneously given, or where input tax credits have been wrongly availed or utilized by reason of fraud, misstatement, willful misstatement, suppression of facts, followed by in order to evade tax. The next phrase in this law is in order to evade tax. That is, अगर तीनों चीजें वो प्रूव करता है, आपने suppression किया, fraud किया, willful misstatement दी, he still has to prove it was done to evade tax. That is where the quantification comes. If he cannot correlate this phrase together, that story cannot be bound together, it's assembly for his brother. He must prove in the Shokas notice that all this you did, which is supported by section 74, to evade tax. Now supposing case come to Rahul, he tells the team to do research. कहते नहीं सर, जब हमने रिटर्न भरी थी ये चीज टैक्स फ्री थी. रिटर्न के बाद उन्हें टैक्स लगा 5% जो भी हो. Can you see this was evasion? No. You have sufficient ground not to charge tax. Or on a credit note you claimed input tax credit. You did not reverse input tax credit note. Can you say this is fraud? No, this is short paid. There is no fraud here. The credit note are declared in the returns. Right? But you did not reverse input tax. It's not fraud. You have no intention to evade tax. It's declared in the return. Only those things which are not declared in your return or which you do not get recorded when you call in section 70 to make a statement. Only then these 3 or 4 words can come into play. Fraud आपने रिटर्न में दिखाया ही नहीं. उसमें it's very difficult to plead. It is not fraud. Supposing you are not paid the tax at all, can we say this is fraud? That's not fraud.
No, it's not right.
Turn out a grant tax नहीं take it. Not a fraud. But only when you go to make statement and your factual statements are not corroborated by the other evidence they have in possession which are confronted to you, then they say that this is fraud. This evade tax. If that happens, to evade tax, he shall serve a notice person chargeable with tax. Again, definition is person. You need not be registered to get 74 notices or 73 notices. Person as defined, it's inclusive definition. Although 2021 categories of persons are mentioned in technical. So, chargeable with tax. Now, supposing a notice comes to you, you are dealing only with exempt goods. Can you say you were chargeable with tax? आपको नोटिस आता है किसी डीलर को, आप उसे देखते हैं तो सारा गेहूं बेचता है जो भी टैक्स रेट है और कुछ करता ही नहीं. Simply says this is not relevant, but we are not chargeable tax. But now supposing in this ground, he says you sold cars, you gave commission, you took lawyers' bills, then you was chargeable to tax. So that also you have to see when you get notices where a person is not chargeable to tax, then you have to rule out the possibilities under RCM or because RCM is also, you can input tax credit for it, it's also chargeable to tax. Therefore, you need to go through it carefully. Spend at least 2 hours on a notice. Don't ask anybody, nobody will help you. हम जो फोन करके पूछते हैं राहुल जी इसका क्या करना है, ये राहुल को क्या पता है, क्लाइंट तुम्हारा है, फैक्ट तुम्हारे, उससे पूछ लो सर इसका कोई जजमेंट है, तो किस बात की जजमेंट? Don't hesitate to refer to seniors and give them money. Never take opinions free of cost. Nobody gives you, I can guarantee you. People in our age, we give it because we are not working for money anymore. But once you are dealing with professionals like Rahul and the firm, there's many people to pay for. If you want to consult him, please ask himself what your consultation is. If it suits you, go ahead. If it suits you, don't go ahead. But don't ask a दोस्त है, उन्होंने क्लासे 10 डेल्टा की थी ना, सब बता देगा, नहीं बताएगा आपको. अपना खुद पढ़ो. Otherwise, these kind of seminars, ask any question. People who are speaking, they'll be able to answer a little bit of it. So, chargeable to tax means, if you were dealing totally exempt good, don't jump. Rule out possibilities कि कोई RCM में कहीं कुछ कमीशन तो रेंट तो नहीं लिया, कि उसमें मैं टैक्स देना हूँ. If that is there, then 74 notice is valid. You may still get deduction for exempt turnover. But on the question of jurisdiction, you cannot challenge the notice because you were charged. Right? Which has not been so paid, which has so this is same ground like in 73. So the distinction between 73 and 74 is that these 4 grounds disjointed by word or: tax not paid, short paid, refund, erroneous refund, or input tax credit, wrongly availed or utilized. These 4 things are common in 73 and 74. 74 goes by further, by way of fraud, misstatement, willful misstatement, suppression of facts, to evade tax. That is the key thing. If they have any other ground where a similar thing can exist, that is the principle of adjustment damage. कोई और ग्राउंड लेता तो उनको इन्हीं शब्दों में लाना है. फ्रॉड की इक्विवेलेंट हो, विलफुल मिसस्टेटमेंट, सप्रेशन ऑफ फैक्ट्स हो, कंसीलमेंट वर्ड इज नॉट देयर, बट दिस इज प्रिज्यूम. कंसीलमेंट इज प्रिज्यूम है. सर्विस टैक्स में कंसीलमेंट भी था, यहाँ कंसीलमेंट वर्ड नहीं. सो ऑलवेज रिमेंबर, इफ none of these ground is mentioned in Shoga notice, challenge this in High Court straight away, this will be quashed. Because his jurisdiction to invoke section 74 depends on these 4 words. and he has to give a finding, you did this intentionally to evade tax. He has to write a story. He simply can't copy it. That's my section 32 default says that. You have to cross which ground you want to rely upon. Now section 32 is same like section 73. That's also the case of reassessment. And the return, return misleading, misleading. Essay misleading. How? Right? Or they have quest yours. Demanded the matter, there is a limitation. So जब आपको नोटिस आए 74 का, आपको सबसे पहले देखना है क्या ये 4 रीजन आपको लागू हैं, क्या वो उसमें लिखे हैं, या सिंपली ये 4 लाइन लिखी कोई विदाउट फर्दर रीजंस. It is again question of jurisdiction. You cannot go back, cannot cut paste copy a provision and say कि इस पे मैंने नोटिस इशू करा. Because it's for you to say you have done these activities to evade tax. How? आपके बिल गलत है, आपके सप्लायर चोर है, आपने चोरी की, आपके बैंक गलत है, आपके स्टेटमेंट गलत है, आपके सेक्शन 70 की जो स्टेटमेंट रिपोर्ट की सारी गलत है, सारा फ्रॉड है. He has to write one paragraph to show, as we do in Supreme Court judgment in section 73. We have around 5-6 statements. And Supreme Court is clear. You have to justify invocation of extended limitation. If you cannot justify this out, right? But the same chीज of 73 में we are not reading it. Now come to explanation. The major problem is the explanation here in 74. Now explanation is given both for section 73 and 74. Read explanation for the purpose of section 73 and this section. What is the meaning of explanation? We'll spend 5 minutes on this. The expression all proceedings in respect of said act, said notice shall not include proceeding under section 1. आपने सारे आपने पेमेंट कर दी तो जितनी प्रोसीडिंग सारी कंक्लूड हो जाएगी. What the tax interest penalty? This is not section 132. 132 deals with cognizant offenses and non-cognizable offenses. Where you can get paid, where you cannot get paid. Section 132, subsection 1, subclause A, B, C, D. If you commit that offense, you'll be arrested and sent to jail. For other E to M or N or whatever, these are bailable offenses. जैसे कि अगर आपने 73 का 74 का नोटिस आपको आ गया, आपने नोटिस से सारी पेमेंट कर दी, टैक्स भी दे दिया, इंटरेस्ट भी दे दिया, जो अगर 74 में मैंडेटरी पेनल्टी 15% वो भी दे दी. It will not save your arrest. That is, in GST law, the prosecution, composition, penalties all stand on 3 different tenets. 73, 74, conclusion of proceedings in respect of all proceedings. If they get over, but 132 proceeding does not get over. If you have to go to jail, you will go to jail. So जब आप इसको एग्जामिन करते हैं 74 का, आपको ये भी ध्यान रखना है कि if you accept and pay, then what happens? Like we did the judgment of Windswift the other day. Why did Supreme Court pay interest? Facts one, you want to settlement commission. आपने सारे अपने फॉल्ट माने, हमने सब गलतियां की, हमने चोरी की, हमने चोरी के रसीद भी लिए, आपने वो टैक्स भी दिया. Now you want to dispute interest? तो no. जब 74 में अगर हमें समझ नहीं आती किस चीज की और हम उस पढ़ा को कहते हैं यार 2-3 लाख रुपए दे दे, to see whether you can be booked under 132. If yes, be careful. Better to adjudicate rather than pay. GST में adjudication का फायदा है. Tax interest तो आपको देना ही देना है. Nobody can pay in 73, 74. Question is 73 you save 10% penalty. और कुछ सेविंग नहीं होती. तो पैसे देने की सिर्फ 10% पेनल्टी बचती है. 74 में 15%. अगर आप 30 दिन के अंदर जो भी करें. Prima facie strong case in your view, do not agree to pay. Plus interest, once you are not paying tax, there is an opportunity cost. यहाँ 18% हो सकता है आपकी ROI 12%. तो आपको cost benefit करना है उसका. But I will not go for say that you take money from. But then you accuse in that notice. You can't say for the sake of buying peace, for the sake of our company's sake, वो बहुत से वकील लोग लिखते हैं बड़ी-बड़ी बातें. No, it has no meaning. The fact is, you are admitting Shoga notice allegations and paying tax. You can't say in order to buy peace. नो, राहुल गांधी कैन नॉट से कि मेरे से 100 करोड़ रुपए ले लो तो ईडी में छोड़ दो, आई वांट टू बाय पीस फॉर माय पार्टी, इट डजंट मीन कि ही विल बी स्पेयर्ड, नो, यू कैन नॉट बी स्पेयर्ड इफ देयर इज सब्सटेंस इन व्हाट ही इज डूइंग। तो 74 को नोटिस को आपको बहुत ध्यान से पढ़ना है जब भी आपके पास आता है, छोटा केस हो बड़ा केस हो, आपको ध्यान रखना है कि अरेस्ट की जो 132 की पावर है सेक्शन 69, दैट पावर डजंट विथड्रॉ एट ऑल, दैट पावर स्टिल रिमेन्स बोथ फॉर 73 एंड 74, दोनों में अरेस्ट हो सकता है। कुछ लोग कहते हैं वो तो 74 में अरेस्ट है, नो, 73 दे कैन गो टू मजिस्ट्रेट एंड टेक अरेस्ट फॉर इट, नो बात। 74 में इनको पुलिस पावर देते हैं, कमिश्नर हिमसेल्फ कैन अरेस्ट, 73 में वो अरेस्ट करने की पावर नहीं। अदरवाइज जो बात होती तो फिर 73 में 132 को नहीं लाते ना इसमें, लॉसेस हो। नेक्स्ट इज वेयर द नोटिस अंडर द सेम प्रोसीडिंग इज इशू,
That means 73 or 74, man, you pay your taxes and penalties just to get over with it. Section 132 still stands, right? So, will that mean that this department still has, or you have still a ground, okay, I made the payment of tax, but I'm not...
that's for the court to decide. Department can initiate.
Yeah, they can initiate proceedings,
They
but you
can-
still
they
have a ground to fight that. नहीं तो क्या होगा, because it's
There's a
self-admission.
difference. There's a
Self-admission that you have
difference. No,
paid.
there's a difference. If you go for composition, they'll get away. But your composition is serious. Simply buying payment tax, you are discharging a liability. But it's statutory liability. But since you complete an offense, that doesn't mean that you are a very happy tax debit हो जाएगा.
नहीं, छूटेगा नहीं, but what I'm trying to say
It can be a ground for the court to consider that now this guy paid tax and a penalty of 2 hours square. आपका चेक बाउंस हो गया, तो किसी सुप्रीम ने क्या बोला, once you admit on check this is signature, trial court has no reason not to initiate proceedings. You can't say ये डेट के लिए था, किसके लिए था, presume कि section 139 is involved. आपको तो मैंने पैसे दे दिए, doesn't mean the case will be dropped. Paying a check amount is one part. Committing an offense which is criminal or bouncing a check is another part.
They are two different cases.
They are totally two different proceedings.
Criminal liability.
But yes, you have a ground when you go to court. सर ये गलती हुई, हमने मानी, हमने टैक्स दिया, इंटरेस्ट दिया, पेनल्टी दिया, मेरी कोई लायबिलिटी और कुछ नहीं। लेकिन अगर आपके एलिगेशन बहुत सीरियस है, आपके टैक्स वाइज नकली दिए हैं और प्रूव है, what will you do? And think of composition, which is very expensive part. तेलंगाना हाई कोर्ट में उन्होंने कंपोजिशन ऑफर की थी, पता है? जब ओरिजिनल जजमेंट आई थी तेलंगाना वाली, उन्होंने कहा था कि यू कैन गो कंपोजिशन, ही सेड ओके, वी गिव यू चॉइस, गो पे सो मच मनी, 225 crores. So GST law in this way is totally different from other enactments. Notwithstanding you pay tax, the prosecution can still stand. And this is right. For this kind of law, this is a good remedy.
So that is why normally in show cause notices which are not issued under 73 or 74, it is written at the last, there is a caveat that if you pay the above taxes and penalties, the proceedings are deemed to be dropped.
लेकिन वो नोट से गलत है। नोट से डिमांड रिकवरी कैन बी डन ओनली थ्रू 73. उसका बकवास कर रहा
कह रहा
है।
है ऐसे ही यार।
ऐसे आ रहे हैं, but that is what
वो ठीक है,
I
because आप लोग पे but demand recovery cannot be done in India. अभी हम देखेंगे एक्सप्रेशन में 122, 129 के प्रोसीडिंग्स will also be dropped. अगर 73 में प्रोसीडिंग ड्रॉप होती है ऊपर नहीं आए. Demand recovery can be done only through 73. Okay, continue. Where the notice under same proceeding is issued to the main person liable to pay tax. Now remember amendment in 132(1)(a). Not only the principal taxpayer but also the collateral parties also get covered under section 132 now. तो उसको उन्होंने इसको कवर करने के लिए बोला है with the notice have been concluded under 73, 74, the proceeding against all other persons liable to pay a penalty under 122 and 25 are deemed to be concluded. Mr. A accused था, उससे उन्होंने 10 करोड़ रुपए ले लिए. अगर बाकी लोगों को पेनल्टी लगनी तो पेनल्टी नोटिस आते हैं मेरे पास है कि उसमें 74 पार्टी है, अलग अलग पार्टी, सबको एक नोटिस है। काफी आपको मार्क करती है कि फलाने बंदे खा लिया ये आपके पास है, जो लोग हैं such notices again you have to examine where do you stand for your firm in these notices. इससे अगले चलिए no, we are talking about 74 notation. Composition no connection with everything. It has no link at all. Composition is when you are caught. You say okay, I am willing to pay composition. हालांकि कंपोजिशन के बाद उसकी प्रोसीडिंग है ड्रॉप हो जाए. नो, उसका कोई रीजन नहीं. सिर्फ आपको एफिशिएंसी ऑफ स्कीम आपको एसपीडीआर फी जो मिलता था वो आपके फर्म को ही मिलता था. आपके बाकी साथियों को ऊपर का कोई क्लियर. आप अक्यूज थे, आपने एमनेस्टी की, आपको लागू किया, आपको आपके केस में आपको साथी बाकी उनका पूछेंगे. Again, once you read this explanation, it is only for the purpose of 73-74. Once the explanation is clearly saying it's for the purpose of these sections, it can have no relevance whatsoever for any other provision. Only 122, 129, 122 and 129, only two sections. उसमें वो penalty उनको लगनी है. Again, you have to read law. Explanation deals with 73-74 in respect of all proceedings. All proceeding what? For the purpose of 73-74. मुझे क्या रीजन है? ठीक है. अब वो कहते हैं इनकी हम सेक्शन 132 को बाहर रखेंगे. अब वो आगे कहते हैं कि अगर कोई मेन एक्यूज्ड है, जो मेन पर्सन प्रिंसिपल जिसे टैक्स है वो देता है, तो बाकी उसके साथी बाकी हैं उनको 122 129 की पेनल्टी ड्रॉप है. नहीं, फिर 125 ही है. Explanation 2. For the purpose of this act. Now this is where the catch when you read definition. This is for the purpose of this act. Now this explanation says for the purpose of this act. पहले ऊपर क्या था? For the purpose of section 73 and 74. Now it defines for the purpose wherever the word suppression exists, this definition shall be invoked. आपने क्या नहीं सकते कि वहां पे लिखा नहीं है, क्या लिखा है? For the purpose of this act, expression suppression. Suppression is quote unquote. Normally lawmakers don't write quote unquote, but they are specifically defining the word suppression. Therefore, there is a quote unquote. Shall mean non-declaration of facts or information which a taxable person is required to declare in return. Not valid return. So return includes valid return. Where a taxpayer not facts or information which a taxable person is required. So this taxation doesn't go to any person. Now it goes to a taxable person. Who's taxable person? Who has exceeded taxable quantum or who is otherwise required to be registered. So indirectly they are including a person whose turnover is above 40 lakh rupees goods or 20 lakh services. And therefore they make him taxable person. Right? So taxable person is effect or information. Effect है कि आपके रिटर्न की फिगर लो सारी क्या क्या करते हो आप धंधा करते हो बताओ. जो मांगते हैं हम 2A2 भी लियो सारे कुछ उनके पास प्रीमियम मांगते हैं आपसे. अब आपसे मांगते हैं वो इंफॉर्मेशन. फिर दिस क्वेश्चन है क्या आप इन लोगों को जानते हैं ऐसे इंफॉर्मेशन क्या आपसे न्यूज़पेपर को जानते हैं क्या आपने कभी 2 करोड़ की पेमेंट की है नहीं की. क्या आपका अपने को बिजनेस डीलिंग किया, नहीं की थी, क्या ये आपके रिश्तेदार है, नहीं थी, क्या आपका भाई बहन है, नहीं थी. दिस इंफॉर्मेशन, if this information is found wrong, you have suppressed the fact. Therefore section 74 will get involved. फैक्ट्स है जो आपके रिटर्न का बिजनेस है, कितनी टर्नओवर है, क्या माल आप बेचते हैं, क्या टैक्स रेट है, वो फैक्ट्स है. The word is fact or information. फैक्ट नहीं मांगते, इंफॉर्मेशन मांगते हैं. और स्टेटमेंट में इंफॉर्मेशन मांगते हैं, हम गलत देते हैं. That will amount to suppression. And what is suppression? Go back to 74. This is one of the grounds to invoke 74. Fraud, willful misstatement or suppression. So they have defined only word suppression. They have not defined fraud or willful misstatement. Therefore, the judgments passed in earlier regime shall be relevant here. But for the suppression, you will discount the judgment, the ratio of the judgment to include this many. Now, supposing we don't read this definition of suppression, हम तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट कोट कर देते हैं, अब आप मजा आ गया मिल की जजमेंट. बहुत स्पेसिफिक डेफिनेशन आपके. Therefore, when you read suppression, this is very serious definition. In the return statement, report or any other document furnished under this act. Fact or information return में, statement में, report, any other document defined in section 2 which includes your computers, your electronic data, document is defined in section 2. Furnished in this act or the rules. कुछ एक्ट में मांगे, रूल में मांगे, आपको सब देना है. अगर आप ठीक से नहीं देंगे तो सप्रेशन होगा. Or failure to furnish any information or being asked for in writing by the proper officer. उसने आपको क्वेश्चनर भेजा, ये बताओ सारा, राइटिंग में भेजा, आप नहीं देते. If you fail to provide that information, that shall also amount to suppression. So now, let's go back to meaning of definitions. If a word is not defined, we follow a common rule of interpretation. If a word is technical, then we ascribe to it technical definition. But where a word is defined by this statute, there can be no other meaning. And this definition suppression shall not require any harmonious construction. But this is unambiguous, very clear. So act में, rule में, आपसे कोई इंफॉर्मेशन मांगे, कोई फैक्ट मांगे, रिटर्न मांगे, अगर आप वो नहीं देते या गलत देते हो, this will amount to suppression. He has to prove nothing else. बोलेगा जी मैंने भट्ट साहब ने भेजा था, एक बार 2 बार इन्होंने जवाब नहीं दिया, suppression. और मैंने बोला था बैंक से डील करते हुए, कहते नहीं ये डील करते हैं. अशोक शर्मा का दोस्त था, ये कहते मेरा दोस्त नहीं था, ये भी गलत है. मिस्टर वर्मन का वकील था, कहते मेरा वकील नहीं था, वो भी गलत है. So once all these facts come on record, no court will interfere. High court will never go into the facts. Up to tribunal you can do whatever fight you want to do. High court में these facts are not law. Only question of raise whether these things amount to suppression. Principal question of law, substantive question of law. Did you say, Mr. Verma, read suppression definition? You are clearly covered here. This question is not relevant. So the distinction between 73, 74 is only because of evade to tax by reason of fraud, willful misstatement of facts, where suppression of facts is defined. Right? And if these things happen, then you have a problem. Because the period of 3 years gets extended to 5 years from date of filing of annual return. 2 साल के झगड़े अगर 1 साल में है तो अगले सारे सालों के आपका नोटिस आएगा. ये गारंटीड है. आई कैन गिव यू गारंटी. 74 का आपको 1 साल का नोटिस आया, सारे साल का नोटिस आएगा पक्का. क्योंकि आपका बिजनेस मॉडल तो वही है ना. उनके जब भी आपके रिटर्न डालेंगे वो सेम इश्यूज पे देयर बी रेड फ्लैग्स. ये पता करते हैं जी सब झूठे बोचे हैं सब कुछ सारे नोटिस. Let's go further on 74. Is different. Where any person served with an order issued at section 9 pays the tax along with interest payable thereon and a penalty equivalent to 50%. तो बाकी पेनल्टी आपको माफ होगी.
So this happens. It's automatically comes calculated on your dashboard, and officer says कि ऐसा कैसे कर दिया. They are not aware till date कि 50% वाला issue.
And if you go back to 7311, वहाँ there is no percentage except 10% of whichever is higher. That's the distinction between 7311 and 7411. Let's pick up the judgments before we come. You can give this email, Rahul can email it to all of you. I think he has your emails. Again, these judgments are in service tax regime. There is no judgment by Supreme Court on this issue. But they are, most of them are squarely applicable in this laws. This I have written. Division of section 73 in paramaterial is section 11A. After which 73, 74, except to the explanation, the provisions are same. Except the word concealment doesn't exist in GST law, but that makes no difference at all. There is no material difference between the two provisions. In both cases, notice has to be issued. Limitation है सारा आप पे यही 3 महीने 6 महीने 3 साल 5 साल वो same limitations है. Next, first judgment is this: CST versus Shri Krishna. They reported in so and so. It construing of this interpretation what we have discussed just now. I have already told you this, but reading what Supreme Court says on the issues which we are discussing. In construing fiscal statement, in determining the liability of a subject to tax, one must have regard to the strict letter of the law and not revenue satisfy the court that the case falls strictly within the provisions of the law, the subject can be taxed. So the definition of suppression is clear. इसमें कोई ambiguity नहीं है, simple English है. 74 की language बिल्कुल simple है, कोई problem नहीं है. But you cannot say नहीं कि हम तो bona fide थे, हम तो गरीब हैं, हम तो मर गए नहीं, हमारा तो धंधा बंद हो गया, कोविड में फैक्ट्री बंद हो गई. All these have no reason. Tax knows no equity. If you fall, if revenue proves their case based on what we have discussed just now from a revenue angle, then you shall be taxed. You will have to pay tax. Next. In interpreting the taxing theory, equitable considerations are entirely out of place. Tax knows no equity. Nor can taxing statute be interpreted on any presumptions or assumptions. Either side. You cannot say नहीं सर ये तो जो चोर है उनके लिए है 74. हम तो चोरी करते नहीं, मारते तो गलती हुई. No, there's no presumption that you are clean or revenue stored. You follow the law. The court must look squarely at the words of this statute and interpret them. It must interpret a taxing statute in the light of what is clearly expressed. It cannot imply anything which is not expressed. Remember the theory of reading down we discussed the other day? A provision can be read down by court, make the law workable, but where law is clear, unambiguous, language is simple English, courts will not imply, court have no power to imply anything. Shall इसका मतलब ये होगा? No. That is why Income Tax 148A, if you read the judgment of Supreme Court, they invoked 148, Article 142. Otherwise, they had no way out. Law was clear. All these are time barred. अगर वहाँ लॉ में कहीं वो इंटरप्ले कर सकते हैं वर्ड में, वो आर्टिकल 142 टैक्स मैटर में इन्वोक नहीं करते. उन्होंने किया. क्योंकि अगर मैं टाइम बार कर दिए तो सारे चोर भागे, टैक्स मिलेगा ही नहीं कुछ भी. तो वी में किससे थे लॉयर्स के लिए सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने क्या गवर्नमेंट को बचा लिया? नो, दे सेव द लॉ, दे हैड द पावर. हाई कोर्ट को नॉट हैव. हाई कोर्ट को आके बार-बार कोई पावर नहीं. It must interpret a taxing statute in the light of what is clearly expressed. It cannot imply anything which is not expressed. It cannot import provisions of statutes so as to supply any assumed deficiency. Remember, if a statute does not refer any law, like we discussed other than brand equity, where they invoked Limitation Act, that was a horrible kind of adoption. But Limitation Act is not applicable to GST VAT laws. So they cannot import के शायद इनकम टैक्स में ही लिखा है, शायद उसमें ही लिखा है. So they cannot import into a prevalent statute any provision. The word uses provision, not interpretation. If there is an interpretation of concealment in income tax, can be applied here. But they are not invoking a provision in this law. They are invoking an interpretation of a word given in any other statute. अब GST जजमेंट है, इनकम टैक्स है, एक्साइज है, कस्टम्स है, बाकी जजमेंट है. So they are interpreting a particular word, a particular phrase. But they cannot say that वो income tax section 142 में लिखा है हम ही मानेंगे. No, they cannot. Courts have no power to do this. Supreme Court examining whether the department justified initial proceeding for short levy after the expiry of the normal period under 11B. Same issue, whether Section 74 could be invoked by authorities. Then what does Supreme Court say next? I've just picked up this paragraph only. Carved out an exception to the provision that permitted the department to reopen proceedings if the levy was short within 6 months of the relevant date. In साल हमारे केस में 73 और 5 साल 70 में, and permitted authority to exercise the power within 5 years from relevant date under the circumstances mentioned in the proviso, one of which was suppression of facts. It is in this context that Supreme Court observed that since suppression of facts has been used in the company of strong words, resistant generous, fraud, collusion, or willful default. And now these are the words used in service tax. I think the collusion or concealment are a part of intangible fraud. It can be covered in fraud. There are later judgments of Supreme Court where say fraud can include this also. Fraud, collusion, or willful default. Here they have used a much bigger word, misstatement, not default. Suppression of facts must be deliberate and with an intent to escape payment of duty. The observation are as follows. I told you, all these 4 words are followed by the word to evade tax. Evasion means willful. Evasion shows your mental state. कि हमने चोरी करनी है, हमने पैसे बचाने. That is the meaning of to evade tax. Next please. Empower department to reopen proceedings if the levy has been short levied or not levied in 6 months so and so. The meaning of word both in law and even otherwise is well known. In normal understanding, it is not different than what is explained in various dictionaries, unless of course the context in which it has been used indicates otherwise. So this law indicates the meaning of suppression otherwise. So this judgment shall be irrelevant for the purpose of Section 74 because the way suppression has been defined. So whatever Supreme Court has said here is on suppression is no relevance here. A perusal of the proviso indicates that it has been used in a company of such strong words as fraud, collusion, or willful default. Next one. In fact, it is the mildest expression used in the proviso. Yet the surroundings, that is, the words they are prior to it and followed with evade to tax, the surroundings which has been used, it has to be construed strictly. What does it mean by strictly? Onus shifts on revenue. Revenue is saying you done a fraud. I will not say I have done a fraud. This is notwithstanding the word may be mild. Suppression is a mild word. In the company of very strong words, Supreme Court says we will require revenue to construe strictly. Prove it. He suppressed the facts in order to evade tax. Then they quote that the act must be deliberate. आपने रिटर्न गलत भर दी गलती से, it doesn't mean कि आपने टैक्स पे नहीं किया. It doesn't mean fraud. We are admitting a tax liability. आप टैक्स रेट गलत लगा लिया. It doesn't mean it's a fraud. The act must be deliberate to evade tax. That is in the context of facts of your case. Whether the act could be called a deliberate act or not a deliberate act. In taxation, it can have only one meaning, that the correct information was not disclosed deliberately to escape from payment of duty. That is the meaning of expression what we said. If you are called upon to give information, fact, etc. in any return or any document or in a statement, if this is found incorrect, it will amount to suppression. So once you read this definition and correlate with this judgment, this definition is much more stronger than what Supreme Court says. Where facts are known to both the parties, the omission by one to do what he might have done, and not that he must have done, does not render it suppression. This was told in context of 73(1), 11A or 128 customs. This cannot be said here. God does not use these words. आपने information नहीं दी, suppression होता है. No, let us say it actually happens. A case comes to you, सर उनका notice आया था, हमने जवाब नहीं दिया, 2 notice आए थे. How do you deal with it? reply is not enough. You still have to seek condonation. Why did you not file reply at the time when you were asked for? Give a sufficient explanation that these were the reasons. COVID था, बीमार था, तो मर गया, जी गया, जो भी लिखना आपने लिखो, which is sustainable with documents. फिर लिखो कि no, we did not file reply, but the following are the grounds where we are filing complete information and then doesn't lead to any suppression. Officer is bound to consider it. Because the explanation doesn't write, if you do not give this, it may amount to suppression of facts. But the explanation stops. It doesn't say that you will be charged with tax liability. So the consequence of not giving information is only suppression of fact. It doesn't mean that your demand will be confirmed. But supposing them write this, then you are in trouble. So there is no deeming consequences of not doing an action through this explanation of suppression of facts. Next please. The court in the case of they followed the earlier judgment by dealing with the meaning of facts and provides the so and so held that the term must be construed strictly. It does not mean any omission and the act must be deliberate, willful to pay tax. कोई omission का मतलब ये नहीं कि 74 में ले आएगा हमारे को. Like I told you, once you get a notice, go through it. What is it? He is saying you did not supply. What is it saying you have made in this statement or a fraud or a suppression of fact? क्या आपने ऐसा क्या कर दिया? If you think information was given, there can be no intention. अब आप उसने कहा कि आपने पेमेंट ली, कहते हमने पेमेंट नहीं ली. आपको वकील बुक्स कहती है पेमेंट है. How can there be a way to tax? वकील बुक्स बोलती है that document है. So till you go through this notice, spend time, correlate the 74 and explanation, your applying will be wrong. I can give you in writing anybody in this part. Unless you read the notice and apply the law in section 74, का आप कहाँ fit होते हैं? उसके साथ से आप लाइक बनाना है. Time lagging. I don't think anybody in this country can make a showcase reply in 2 days. It takes weeks or 10 days before you draft a good reply to a showcase notice. जो आप चीज आप रीड नहीं करोगे बाद में रीड कर नहीं पाओ. जो कुछ कहना है आपको रिप्लाई में कहना है. What you don't plead, you can't argue in court. Or you move an application for additional evidence if law permits. Next please. The court further held in taxation, its suppression of facts के बारे में can have only one meaning, that the correct information was not disclosed deliberately to escape payment of duty. This is another way of saying in order to evade tax. Where facts are known to both the parties, the omission by one to do what he might have done and not he must have done does not render it suppression. You have to discount this ratio of law to the definition of suppression of facts given. अगर इसका मीनिंग सेम है तो जजमेंट लागू होगी. अगर इसका मीनिंग सेम नहीं है जजमेंट की कोई रहता नहीं. The expression suppression. Why I have taken suppression? Because suppression is the only word really defined here. All other words are same like in tax. Has been used in proviso of the act accompanied by very strong words as fraud. So same Pushpa ruling they have continued in all our subsequent judgments because they were dealing with 73(1). Blindly they have followed the judgment. Next please. Suppression means failure to disclose full information with the intent to evade payment of tax. Again the same. On whose this burden is? When the revenue invokes the extendable limitation, settling the burden is the cost upon it to prove suppression of fact, not you. They are invoking extended period of limitation. You have to prove nothing. Therefore, again, you have to carefully go through showcase notice. क्या हम इसमें आते हैं? नहीं है जैसे क्वेश्चन jurisdiction you have no jurisdiction. आप क्या हो आपके रिटर्नों के बेस पर suppression कहते हैं हमने सारी आपको लिखा है इस बात का suppression. You don't want to go to High Court? Challenge the jurisdiction of the person who should notice if he is a proper officer. If you have no jurisdiction under the following circumstances. What is Supreme Court? Next. This is Delhi High Court judgment. Also examined at length the issue relating to extended limitation as well. So next. Therefore, it's evident the failure to pay tax is not a justification for human penalty. Also because suppression in the proviso so and so. Fraud, collusion, where the state of suppression does not mean any omission. It must therefore deliberate. In other words, there must be deliberate separation of information for the purpose of evading or payment of duty. It connotes a positive act on the assessee to avoid excise duty. A positive act, a mental frame mind कि आपने चोरी की है, आपने चोरी करनी थी तभी आपने इसे गलत इंफॉर्मेशन दी या नहीं दी या मिसस्टेटमेंट किया जो भी किया. So all that section 74 requires is your mental state to evade tax due to these four strong words. When you read the Salif Fabri case, you will come to know the extended meaning of what is fraud, सारा उसमें लिखा हुआ है. उन्होंने बोला कि सेंट्रल एक्ट की जो पेनल्टी आप लगा रहे हैं रिक्वायर्स एन एसए है. विदाउट नोटिस यू कैनॉट इशू पेनल्टी फॉर क्लैश इन दैट केस. दिस इज 73 74 चाहे आइए. Okay, we start with section 17. If you see the marginal heading, it deals apportionment or blocking of input tax credit. If you remember the cost accounting lectures, it had two words: allocation, apportionment. Allocation can be of a direct cost. Apportionment is of indirect cost, where you apportion according to the ratios. Under section 16, input tax credit is available only to a registered person if he makes taxable supplies or zero revenue supplies. Other tax credit is not available. So when if it's a non-taxable supply or an exempt supply or a tax-free supply, if he makes input tax credit is not available. So what is the consequence of it? It was so simple. Why are we discussing it? It is a huge problem of the assessment. Supposing you run a business where 80% of the material are non-taxable, tax-free or exempt. Only 20% are taxable. But you are incurring expenses, offset, etc. for the entire operation. Right? So if you have input tax credit of 10 lakh rupees, you will get 20% of it. Remaining you will not get. That is the problem. So all those fellows who are dealing with mixed kind of supplies like this, they have a problem. It's by default. What is your total turnover? 100 rupees. Non-taxable, exempt, tax-free 80 rupees. 20% taxable and zero rated. Input tax credit available only for 20. And fund also in that ratio. So they will say that these input tax credits are apportioned according to what you have done. Then there are blocks. Wherever legislature blocks an input tax credit, 99% cases you cannot get it. 1% is an interpretation of scheme of the act. Gujarat High Court did in 2 cases, both the cases were quashed by Supreme Court. They say no. Because the legislature cannot add intention from its own vocabulary. They cannot add words from their own dictionary. Okay, we will add this to make it beneficial to the assessment. And input tax credit, when you claim, you become beneficiary of the money given by someone else to the government by way of tax. And law entitles you to claim at source without any approval from any authority. Law allows you to set it off against your output tax liability when you file the return. If this is the right given to you, then there is a huge responsibility with it. You must claim the correct, eligible and legitimate input tax credit. You cannot go haywire and claim anything. Once you do that, you invoke 73-74. That is the implication of section 16-17, that is 73-74. अगर आपने जानबूझ के गलत क्लेम किया तो 74 में आ जाएंगे आप. अगर गलती किया तो 73 में आएंगे. टैक्स आपको दोनों में देना है. टैक्स इंटरेस्ट आपको दोनों में देना है. इसमें कोई किसी तरह का डाउट नहीं. क्वेश्चन इज ऑफ पेनल्टी एंड लिमिटेशन. पहले में 3 साल है, उसमें 5 साल. So section 17 becomes very relevant. If you see section 16 now is not subject to section 17. It only says you will get input tax credit as may be prescribed. So section 17 is by way of the law being prescribed by authorities, by the lawmakers, under these circumstances, you आगे जाइए प्रियंका करें अशोक शर्मा ने एक तो बार का प्रेसिडेंट था, अब इनको कुछ ठीक से काम करने की आदत नहीं,